Heuristics is another form of brainstorming or trial and error experimentation, just knowledge from the previous experience or best practice or rule of thumb, those types of things. And normally it just helps us to better solidify understanding of relationship between the concepts in our system. So because we're still designing it, we still haven't committed to all final decisions. And again, what leads to discovery of relationship between the concepts is typically found in business descriptions, ideas that something is part of another concept or subject, something is contained, something has knowledge or awareness of something else. Also, membership of one object inside another object. The ideas about exchanging information, communication between two parts of the system, and also ownership, management, and I would throw here also that A could be creating B, right? So A could be a creator of another object. So some objects are used like object factories, so they can create other objects. So all of this again leads us to not just discovery of classes, which we probably early on trying to discover, but also the relationships. How are they related? What is the way of these objects to basically be put together in a combination which would create a solid component of our system. So associations are displayed here as just a simple connection between the objects. So here, if this was a class diagram, we would just use this simple line connecting two boxes, and that would be UML association. So these associations, relationships can be named for better design description. So basically we say that this type of association is ownership, or perhaps in other context, association between person and a property could be indicating occupancy and things like that. Also, we can have data structures in memory which are based on sets or lists of objects. So for instance, instead of having just a single employee in the system, we can have instances of objects that we create in memory, right? So these are like all employees are created in memory, and we need to populate our employee list with these employees. So instead of having some kind of external list object, each employee simply can have a reference to the next employee like this. Okay, so we can have a list of objects like this, and so forth. We can have more of these objects on the list, and finally there is like a trailing list right here, and eventually the next reference to the next object becomes like null reference, so there's no next object that exists. So we have access to some kind of head object or root object of this list, and we have the structure that is organized as a list of objects that refer to one another. So it's possible to have actual objects like this in computer memory. So in UML, you cannot display the same class multiple times, right? So you cannot construct a UML diagram like this. So instead what happens in UML is that you display this object or class that is used to create these objects as a normal class diagram, which is just a box, the name of the class, the data attributes, the operations, and then you make an association here with itself, just like this. And so this is oftentimes also used with an arrow. So this indicates that this employee has a reference to another employee. Okay, so this becomes basically a closed captioning of this type of diagram at runtime when multiple instances of employee will exist in computer memory. But at design time, when we use class diagram, we just simply show that there is at least one employee that has to be present in the system, of course, is this root object, the first object that we create. And then it has a reference to the next employee. And notice that if we do have the presence of the next object, right, next object right here, it is called set member or list member, something like this. Here, this initial one is called set lead. I prefer to call them root objects or head objects. So this is the possibility in UML to indicate this multiplicity through the list of objects, but in UML it will always look like a box associated with itself. And the idea of these indicators, which are called multiplicity indicators, that at least one employee has to exist on this side, which is the lead or root object, and then there will be subsequent instance of an employee, which will be one or more. There could be, like, endless, basically a long list of employee objects connected to each other by this association. So you can see that one single association can have two descriptions on two sides of this association, and that's called a role of the association, the role of an object participating in this association. On the previous slide, we have seen simply named relationships that describes person being the owner of the property or person occupying the property. So these are just a couple of examples, couple of possibilities. So these are possibilities for association to be named and also be specifying unique roles.